Hey everybody, welcome back to Business Tube. Now, today's session, we're going to be starting section 5, and section 5 is all about finance. And the first topic in finance is the sources of finance. Basically, how can a business find money if they need money? What options do they have available to them? Okay, so the first part of sources of finance, we need to know what a business can either get its money internally, that being from within the organisation, so they don't have to start looking to external banks. The money's already in the business and they just need to free it up somehow, okay? Or external, which is when they need to go to somebody else, okay, in order to get money, okay? So the first ones that we're going to look at internal sources of finance. Now, the internal source of finance, the options that you have available to you, we have owner's own investment, so this is their own savings, retained profits, okay, so the profits within the business, getting rid of old stock that maybe they don't need anymore, and selling off fixed assets. So we're going to have a look at each of these in turn. Now, the first one that we have is owner's investment, okay? Now, owner's investment, think of this for a new business. If you're a new sole trader or a new partnership and you're just about to set up a business, then this would be your own investment, your own savings, okay? This is the money that you've already got in the bank. Nobody, or very few people, would be able to set up a business without actually having some money already ready to invest and inject, put into that business, okay? So it's internal because it's your own money, okay? So it's coming from within the business and it's used to put in the business and get it started. Now, the benefits of using your own money, well, because it's your money, you don't have to repay it. So there's no debt, there's no repayments, you don't have to pay anybody back, okay? And again, because you're not borrowing any money, there's no interest to pay, okay? You only pay interest when you're borrowing money because that is the charge for borrowing money, okay? That's how the lender makes money. But because it's your money, there's no interest to pay. The disadvantage is, well, there's a limit to how much owner's savings and owner's own investment that somebody has, that an entrepreneur has. Usually it's not enough, okay? So you may also need to top that up with another source of finance. So there is a limit to how much the owner has. Maybe they don't have enough. And also think about opportunity costs as well with all of these internal sources of finance. Okay, opportunity costs, remember that being if you take option A, then you have to sacrifice, give up option B. Okay, it's the benefit you lose by not taking option B. Well, with all these internal sources of finance and these savings, if you use this money, so if you use this money on option A, setting up your business, okay, you no longer have this money available for things like emergencies or anything else that you could have used this money on if you didn't spend it. Okay, so there is an opportunity cost there for you using your savings. Retained profits, so again, this is money from the business, so it's internal. Now, just remember, profit is calculated annually. So retained profits is only available to a business that has been operating and running for at least 1 year. Because remember, to calculate profit, it's total revenue minus total costs, but it's calculated over an annual period, so for 1 year, okay? So it's only available for businesses that have been trading for 1 year, and it's when the profits are put back into the business. Remember, it's only retained profit if you reinvest that money. If you decide to spend it on a holiday, then that's not retained profit. So it's profit that's being made by the business and put back into the business. Again, it doesn't have to be repaid because there's no debt. There's no interest to pay, again, because there's no borrowing. So there's no borrowing, there's no debt, you don't have to repay it, and there's no interest, okay? Because it's only available to businesses that have been operating for 1 year, okay, it's not available to new businesses. So if it's a new business, a new entrepreneur, a new sole trader partnership, whatever, you wouldn't say retained profits. It's only for a business that has been operating for at least 1 year, okay? Again, the business might not have enough retained profit to cover what it is that they want to do. So to be able to put it back into the business because maybe they don't have enough, okay? And lastly, again, think about opportunity costs, retained profits. If we use it to buy a new machine or if we use it for expansion, then we've sacrificed that money. We can't use it for something else. So what else could you use retained profits on? You could use retained profits on things like dividends, okay? Or again, having it available for emergencies. So again, we've got to think about, is it the best use of this money? Sell of stock. So stock is an asset. Remember what an asset is. An asset is just something that you own, it belongs to you. So your phone, your car, these are assets. So assets is anything that belongs to you. And sale of stock, also known as inventories. Don't forget, on your course they may call it inventories. So basically just getting rid of old stock. Any old stock that you don't need, maybe it's out of trend, out of fashion, we just want to get rid of it, okay? And free up the cash that's tied up in that money. Remember, in order to get stock, you had to spend money. So stock is money. So we want to free up the cash that is tied up in that stock, okay? So a lot of businesses do this in January sales with clothing. Okay, we want to get rid of old clothing. Maybe we've got the summer trend about to start, so we want to get rid of the winter clothing. So we could use sale of stock to get rid of any old trend or any old stock that we have. And then we can get the cash back and put that money back into the business. Okay? It's a quick way of raising finance, and we can sell off stock and get the money for it. And like it says on here, remember, holding stock, if you think of when you did JIT just in time, holding stock is expensive, because if you've got old stock that you can't sell, well, you're going to have to pay for a warehouse. A warehouse, you're going to have to pay for rent, you're going to have to pay for security. If it's ingredients, then you might need to pay electricity for chilling it and things like this. And remember, stock can get damaged as well while it's in storage. So it is expensive to have stock. So if you've got old stock that you no longer need, or that you're going to struggle to sell, then it's better off selling that quickly and getting the money for it, rather than having to pay to keep it in storage. The problem with selling stock quickly is here, that in order to sell stock, you're going to have to reduce your price down, okay? So that means then you're going to be selling this old stock, but you're going to be selling it really, really cheaply. And if you're selling it cheaply, it means you're not making very much money on it, okay? So this is a big drawback with selling sale of stock, is that we're going to have to reduce the price in order to get rid of it. Okay, sale of fixed assets. Again, remember, assets are things that you own, okay, but fixed assets, the fixed part refers to the fact that they are things that are difficult to turn into cash, and you're going to keep them for a long period of time. So fixed assets are things that the business owns that you're going to keep for more than 1 year, such as machines, vehicles, okay? So we're selling these things off that are no longer needed, okay? Getting rid of anything that we don't need anymore. So if you think about a business, if you buy a new machine, then maybe you have an old machine that you no longer need. Well, it's a good idea that the old machine that you don't need anymore, to sell that. Again, because you don't need to store it, and to sell it to get some money for it. Because remember, any asset is cash. It's got cash tied up in it. So it's better if you're not using that asset anymore, whether it be stock, whether it be a fixed asset like a machine, sell that asset and turn it back into cash so you can use that cash in your business. So it's a good way to raise finance, but remember, you can only use sale of fixed assets if you have old assets that you're not using anymore. Okay, many businesses do not have surplus, basically extra or old fixed assets sat around doing nothing. Most businesses' assets, they're using them. So you can only use this source of finance if you've got old machines or old vehicles, old equipment that you're no longer using. Okay, again, remember, because you're selling a fixed asset, to raise money from that, there's no debt, there's no borrowing, and there's no interest to pay. Okay. However, remember, many businesses don't have old assets sat around doing nothing, so this is not an option for many businesses, and it's slow. It's going to take a long time to start selling some sort of specialist machinery. It's going to take a long time to turn that into cash. The external sources of finance then, so we've got bank loans, overdrafts, adding additional partners if it's a partnership, selling shares, leasing, hire purchase, trade credit, grants, and debentures. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these now. Now remember, external is when you're borrowing money or you're getting money from an external source. It's outside of the business. You're going to have to go to another party, what we call a third party, somebody else. Okay, so it's not money within the business. So a bank loan is when we obviously go to a bank or to a lender, and we agree to borrow money, and we have to pay it back over a period of time. Okay. Now, the key thing to remember with a bank loan is it allows you to get a huge sum of money, and we don't just pay that huge sum of money back the next month. What we do is we borrow a huge sum, let's say this much, okay, and then we pay back in small monthly repayments. So we divide the amount in small repayments, and we pay back a small amount each month, okay? Now that small amount that you pay every single month, let's say you borrow $1 million, you might pay back $20,000 per month, okay? So that $20,000 that you're paying back every month is manageable. We can afford to repay that small amount back, okay? So it allows you to borrow a large sum of money and pay back a small amount each month in manageable repayments, okay? So we can set the repayments and spread these repayments over a long period of time. That's good for budgeting and that's good for cash flow as well, okay? Remember, it also allows you to get a large sum of money as well, which you wouldn't have been able to get without borrowing it. The disadvantage, remember, because we're borrowing money, every time you borrow money, we have to pay interest, because interest is the fee, basically, for borrowing money. The bank may also ask for security, so they may ask if you don't repay that loan, maybe they'll take an asset off you to repay it, okay? Also remember that we have debt and we have to repay a bank loan. So we've got to repay it, we've got debt, and we've got interest to pay whenever we borrow from a bank. Overdraft, okay? So like I explained to you in class, that overdraft, basically, if you think of your bank account and you have zero, so you have the level of zero, when you get paid, money goes in, so this is the money that you have to spend. Well, an overdraft allows you to go what we call overdrawn, which allows you to go below zero. It allows you to go minus, okay? So an overdraft allows you to go overdrawn. So if the bank allows you to have a $1,000 overdraft, if we have zero here, it will allow you to spend more than you have in your bank account. So it will allow you to spend and go down to minus 1,000. So we can go down to minus 1,000, and if we're down to minus 1,000, that is what we call being overdrawn, okay? So we can still spend money even if we don't have enough cash in our bank account, because we can go negative on our bank account, okay? However, this is a short-term source of finance, because when we're in our overdraft, when we are minus in our bank account, it's very, very expensive, okay? So the benefits of an overdraft, it allows you to cover the period. So if you have an emergency, you don't have enough cash, it will allow you to be able to cover that expense, okay, until you get some money coming in. Remember, it's short term, so because it's short term, you can pay it back, which if you only use it short term, then it will allow you to save money, okay? But the key thing here is it just allows you to inject money into your business. It allows you to cover any bills or any emergencies that you might have. The drawbacks with an overdraft, when you're negative in your overdraft, whenever you're down here, you have to pay interest, and the interest is very, very high, okay? So the problem with an overdraft is it's very, very expensive, okay? So it can be expensive. Just let me give you another advantage as well with an overdraft. Overdraft is very flexible. It's what we call flexible. You can go in and out of your overdraft whenever you like, okay? If you're up here above zero, if this is zero, and you're up here, it's not costing you anything, okay? You're not in your overdraft. You only pay interest when you are in your overdraft, when you are negative, okay? So it's very flexible. You can go in your overdraft, out. There are no fixed repayments. You pay as much back as you want, as little back as you want. So we have this flexibility with an overdraft. But remember, with flexibility, if the bank gives you flexibility, you're going to have to pay a lot of money for that. So overdrafts are very, very expensive, and that's why they are a short-term source of finance. It's just for an emergency, maybe to keep you ticking over and keep your business running for 1-2 months, no more than that with an overdraft. So it's just emergencies, maybe to buy some stock, but that would be it. You wouldn't go buying a car on an overdraft, because a car is going to cost you a lot of money, which means you're going to be negative for many, many years. Many, many years if you have to buy something like that. So you wouldn't buy a car on an overdraft because it would be too expensive. Additional partners, if you think to a partnership or even a sole trader, if a sole trader becomes a partnership, an additional partner is just adding a partner into the business. So if you have one sole trader and then he or she then has a partner, that's 2 partners, we become a partnership, okay? Or we just add more partners. Remember, a partnership is 2 to 20 partners in a partnership. So if you have 4 partners, you can add 1 more partner, that's 5 partners. And when a partner joins the business, they will invest capital, they will invest money into the business. Now, when a partner invests money, that doesn't have to be repaid, okay? They become a partner, they own part of the business, so that money is invested in, okay? So it doesn't have to be repaid, and because there's no debt, there's no interest, and there's no borrowing, okay? The drawbacks, we have an extra partner now, so that partner wants some ownership. So we have a loss of ownership whenever a new partner becomes into the business. Okay, so it's diluting, it's reducing your percentage because they want some of the percentage as well. And the profit is going to be split now between more partners. So whereas before there was 4 partners, now there's 5. So the profit is split more ways, which means you now get less profit for you. Okay, so that is additional partners. Issuing shares, we should all be familiar with this now from public limited company and private limited company. Okay, so this is selling shares. So it's key to remember that you can only talk about selling shares if the business is a limited company, either a PLC or an LTD, and then they can sell more shares. Selling shares is what we call, well, I would really say it's not a long-term source of finance, it's a permanent source of finance, okay? Because when you sell shares, you do not have to repay that shareholder. They invest money in the business, and that money is yours forever, okay? So it's a permanent source of finance. When you sell shares, that money does not have to be repaid. When that shareholder, if they decide to sell their share, they do not sell it back to the business. It is sold on the stock exchange to another shareholder. I need to clarify that's for a PLC, by the way, guys. So if it's a public limited company, it's a permanent source of finance. When they sell their share, they do not sell it back to the business, they sell it to another shareholder, okay? So with public limited companies, it is a permanent source of finance, okay? With private limited companies, then remember you have control over who buys shares. So you can either agree to sell that share to somebody else or you can buy it back, okay? Because you have full control if it's a private limited company. The shareholders can either, if somebody wants to sell their share, the shareholder can either buy that share off them or they could sell it to somebody else, okay? They have full control. But remember, you do not have to repay shares. Okay, so it doesn't have to be repaid, and again, because there's no borrowing, there's no debt, and there's no interest to be repaid. The drawbacks of issuing shares, remember, when anybody buys shares, they become a shareholder. So we have to pay dividends to shareholders, which means more dividends to pay out, and this is really, really important here. When we sell shares, again, that is a loss of ownership because shareholders are the owners of the business. So we have a loss of ownership whenever we sell shares. Leasing, just think of leasing like renting, okay? So it's just a fancy word for renting. Basically, it allows you to get an asset, use an asset without buying it, okay? If you go on holiday, you use a car for 2 weeks, you get to use that car for 2 weeks, and then you give it back, okay? Which is much better than going on holiday and buying a car for 2 weeks and then having to sell it, okay? So renting just allows you to get an asset, use it for a short period of time, then give it back. So we can obtain an asset without the need to pay a large sum of money up front, okay? Basically renting, like I've just said. When we rent, we have to make regular payments to the leasing company, okay? I would say it's really short to medium term leasing because if you need something long term, you're better off just buying it. Because remember, with renting, you don't get to own it. You use it, then you give it back. So businesses can have the use of up-to-date equipment immediately. Whatever the equipment is, you don't need a huge sum of money to buy it. You just go to a company and pay small, regular repayments every single month to use it. And the repayments are paid every month over a period of time. So it's good for budgeting, it's good for cash flow. The drawbacks, it's expensive if it's long term, because if you lease long term, like it says here, you never get to own that asset. Okay, so if you have that asset for 10 years, you're going to have to rent it for 10 years. Well, if you want something long term, a much better thing would be to buy it, because then once you've paid for it, it's yours, and then you never have to pay any more for it. It becomes your property, your asset, you get to own it. So leasing is really short to medium term, okay? If you need something long term, you're better off buying it. Which leads me on to this one, hire purchase. Hire purchase, think of it like this, you get to hire it, but once you've hired it for a long enough time, then you get to buy it, you own it, okay? So hire purchase, you're hiring it until you've paid for it, and then once you've paid for it, you've basically bought it. That's what this means. So again, it allows the business to get an asset without paying a huge sum of money at the beginning. If you think about a car, to buy a car you're going to have to pay a lot of money. Now most people don't have that amount of money, so they can buy this on hire purchase, okay? Now on hire purchase, you pay a deposit, and then every month you pay your money for the vehicle. Basically you're hiring it, okay? And then once you've paid every single month for, let's say, 4 years, and you've paid the full amount back, then you own it, you bought it. So many people buy by hire purchase. You pay a small amount every single month. Remember, the idea with small amounts every month is they're manageable, they're affordable. You can afford to pay that amount every month until you've paid for 4 years or 5 years, however long it is. And then once you pay that amount off, then the asset becomes yours. You have purchased it, okay? So again, businesses can have use of up-to-date machinery or assets, vehicles immediately. Payments are spread over a long period of time, okay, which is good for budgeting, it's good for cash flow. But the key thing here, unlike leasing, remember leasing, you never get to own it. Whereas with hire purchase, when all of the repayments have been paid, my car was on hire purchase, so I paid every single month, okay, for 4 years. After 4 years, now I own the car. I have purchased it. So once all the repayments have been made, the business will own the asset. It becomes yours, okay? Obviously, until you've made all of those repayments, then you are hiring it. It's not yours. It's owned by the company until you've paid all the money back. The drawbacks, again, because you're borrowing money, because you're effectively having the use of an asset and you're paying it back over time, which means you are borrowing because you're not paying back that money straight away. So you are borrowing to pay it back, okay? You have to pay interest. So there is interest to pay on hire purchase. So it can become more expensive. If you can afford to, you're better off paying with cash if you have that kind of money, okay? So remember, with hire purchase, you do have to pay interest because you do owe money and you are borrowing. And another thing with hire purchase, if you miss your repayments, if you don't repay while you're hiring it, if you miss your repayments, then the company will take that asset off you. They will come and take that vehicle back because the vehicle or whatever you are buying will be used as security. And if you don't make those repayments, they will take it off you, okay? Trade credit, okay, I've got them here. Just remember with trade credit, buy now, pay later. Or basically, take now, pay later, okay? Now, trade credit is only, it's really important that you remember this, it's exclusively only available for raw materials and resources from your suppliers. So you would not buy a car on trade credit or a machine. It is just your supplies from your supplier, your stock. If you're making tables, it would be your wood, your glue. If you're making cars, it would be your glass, your metal, your plastic. It is only supplies, your stock from your suppliers. Now, what it allows you to do is allows you to take them now, and then you pay your supplier back 30 days later. So if you go into a shop, you take the raw materials from the shop, you say thank you very much, and you leave without paying, okay? The supplier will then say, pay me back in 30 days. So you take those supplies away from the shop, you make your tables with your wood, okay? The idea is then you sell the tables, get the money, and then once you've got the money from selling the tables, you go back and pay your supplier, okay? The benefit of this is it allows you to keep cash with you. It's good for cash flow, okay? Because normally you go into your supplier, you take the supplies and you pay, which now means you have no money. You then make your tables with your wood, sell them, and you get the money back. That's not good for cash flow. A better way is take now, pay later. Take the wood from your supplier, make your tables, sell them, get the money, then go and pay your supplier, okay? So it allows you to not go negative because you pay your supplier last, okay? You get the money from your customer first, then you pay your supplier last, okay? So it allows you to keep money with you, okay? So it's only short term, remember it's only for 30 days. You take now, pay later, buy now, pay later. You take the raw materials now, then you pay the supplier in 30 days time. The benefit of this, the business can sell the goods first and then pay for them afterwards, okay? So you make the goods, you make whatever it is you're making, okay? If we use tables, you make your table, then you pay your wood supplier later, okay? So it's good for cash flow, and there's no interest charged, okay? So as long as you pay back within the agreed amount of time, you won't be charged any interest. Drawbacks of this, if the supplier would have given you a discount for paying with cash, as in right away, you're not going to get that discount because you remember, you do not pay right away, you pay later. So you're not going to get any discount for paying straight away, for paying with cash straight away. The other thing as well, If you don't pay the supplier back on time, then the supplier will cancel this agreement and you will not be allowed it again. So you've got to make sure you pay the supplier back in the 30 days that you've agreed. Not 31, you've got to pay them back on time. This is built on trust. Your supplier is giving you the raw materials and saying, I trust you, you pay me back next month. Okay? Now if you break that trust, they will not allow you to use trade credit again. Okay, grants we've done many times on this course. So grants, I like to use the word free money, but it's not free money, okay? Grants are basically loans, but they are loans that do not have to be repaid. So the government gives you cash, they say, right, you can use that cash on whatever you need to, and you do not have to repay us. However, this is why it's not free money. It's a loan, but it's lent to you with certain restrictions, certain requirements, what I like to call strings attached, okay? So remember, the business is the puppet dancing around, the government is the puppet master, okay? They are the one pulling the strings, because they are lending you the money, but they are saying you must do certain things that we say you need to do, okay? So remember, you can have the money, but there are strings attached, okay? Now, with grants, remember, does not have to be repaid, so there's no interest to pay, there's no repayments, it's effectively free money as long as you do what the government says you need to do, as long as you follow their conditions. Now, what would those conditions be? Well, the government will say, you can have this grant, you can have this free money, but we want you to change your location to a poor, high unemployment location. Now, why would the government do that? Well, in a poor location with high unemployment, there are very few jobs. Now, what do businesses create? One of the externalities, the positive externalities of businesses, is that they create jobs, okay? So the government will try and get businesses and force them into certain locations. They will say, we will give you free money, but the string attached is that you have to locate your business in a high unemployment area. So the business will go there and create jobs, okay? So you think again about opportunity cost. The opportunity cost, if you take the grant, if you take the money, what are you sacrificing? What are you giving up? Well, you're giving up your good location, okay? So you have to give up your good location and go to a high unemployment area, okay? Which is not always a good thing for many businesses. If you're selling Gucci handbags, do you want to be in a poor, high unemployment area? Absolutely not, okay? So you have to weigh up, is it worth it for the business? If you're a business that is a factory recruiting unskilled workers, fantastic. Go to the poor area. Go where there's high unemployment. You'll find loads of people, unskilled people, to work in your factory. So take the grant, take the money, and it's not a problem going in that location. But for some businesses, it would be game over for them, okay? So remember, it's money that does not have to be repaid, but there are strings attached, such as where to locate. Debentures, I doubt that you're going to get asked about debentures, okay, at GCSE. It's not one that I would talk about unless you absolutely have to, okay? Debentures are basically loans offered by limited companies. They are only exclusively available to limited companies, okay? Basically, what debentures allow limited companies to do is investors will lend money to the business, and the business will give them a certificate to say, yes, I owe you, I need to repay you back this money you have lent me, okay? The business will then, at a later date in the future, repay the business, repay the investor, should I say, with interest, okay? So debentures are basically long-term loans offered to limited companies, okay? It is key here that this is only for limited companies, okay? So it allows limited companies to raise finance because investors can lend them money, okay? And as this time, unlike with selling shares, okay, this time there is no loss of ownership because the investor who lends money to the business does not become a shareholder. So they do not become an owner. They just lend money and then they get repaid in the future, okay? So it allows the business to raise finance and there's no loss of ownership. The drawbacks, obviously whenever you borrow money, you have to pay interest. So the business has to pay the investor back with interest, okay? And it has to be repaid by the agreed date. So the investor will say, right, I will lend you money, pay me back with interest in 5 years' time. And the business has to pay them back with the agreed interest. And remember, it's only available to limited companies, okay? Right, just lastly then, what affects the source of finance? How do you decide which source of finance to use? Well, it comes down to purpose. What will it be used for? Okay. If it is stock, then you could get stock on trade credit. But remember, you cannot get a machine on trade credit because trade credit is only used for supplies, such as stock. So this will affect the source of finance available. Time. How long will it be needed for? If it's a big purchase, then you're going to have to repay over a long period of time. So a big purchase repaid over a long period of time, you would absolutely not use an overdraft, because remember, an overdraft is short term. So you have to match the length of the purchase to the length of the source of finance. If it's a big purchase, long-term purchase, then it needs to be a long-term source of finance. If it's a small purchase like some stock or a short-term emergency, that can be repaid quickly, so it's a short-term source of finance. Again, the amount of money, because the more you need to borrow, the bigger the purchase, the longer it's going to take you to repay it back. Okay? And the ownership and size of the business. Remember, debentures and selling shares is only available to private and public limited companies. So these are the considerations that you need to think about when recommending a suitable source of finance for a particular situation, a particular purchase. You have to think about these things. Remember, certain sources of finance will only be allowed or will only be useful for certain purchases. Okay, boys and girls, that's everything for source of finance. So as